Money has a peculiar way of turning even the sweetest smiles into razors. I learned this watching my husband Tom work the room at my 28th birthday party, his charm slicing through conversations like a well-practiced blade. I'm Jade, and until tonight, I thought I knew exactly who I'd married. The crystal champagne flute felt cold against my palm as I navigated through clusters of designer dresses and tailored suits in my parents' grand ballroom. Tom's laugh carried across the space, drawing my attention to where he stood with Mason, his father, near the French doors leading to the terrace. "Just trust me on this one," Tom was saying, his voice dropping low. "Richard's new quantum computing division is vulnerable. The security protocols..." My father's name stopped me mid-step. I pressed myself behind a marble column, pulse quickening. Mason's response came sharp and quiet. "You're certain about the timeline?" 3 months, tops. Once the breach happens, their stock will plummet. We'll be perfectly positioned to... Ella appeared at my elbow, her sudden presence making me jump. "There you are. Your mother's looking for..." "Hey, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I grabbed her arm and pulled her behind the column with me. "Listen," I whispered. But Tom and Mason had already moved away, their heads still bent together in conspiracy. "What's wrong?" Ella's eyes narrowed with concern. The champagne in my glass trembled. I think Tom's planning something against my father's company." "What? That's impossible. Tom loves your dad. He's always talking about how much he admires..." "It's an act." The words felt like broken glass in my mouth. All of it. The perfect son-in-law, the devoted husband. God, I'm such an idiot. "Jade, breathe. Maybe you misunderstood." "There's nothing to misunderstand." I drained my champagne in one burning swallow. "He's working with Mason to sabotage Dad's new project. I heard them discussing security breaches, stock prices." Ella's face hardened. "That snake. I never trusted his smile. Too practiced, you know?" "I trusted it." My voice cracked. I built a life around it. Across the room, Tom caught my eye and raised his glass, that million-dollar smile gleaming. I forced myself to smile back, feeling my face crack like a porcelain mask. "What are you going to do?" Ella whispered. I watched Tom return to his performance, working the crowd with practiced ease. Every laugh, every gesture, every seemingly spontaneous moment, I could see the calculation behind it now. 2 years of marriage, and I'd been nothing but a stepping stone in his family's game. "Nothing," I said, straightening my spine. "Not yet. First, I need proof." "Your father should know." "No." I gripped her arm tighter. "If I'm right about this, Tom and Mason have been planning it for years. One wrong move and they'll destroy everything my father's built." The orchestra struck up a waltz, and I saw Tom making his way toward me, that predatory grace in his step that I'd once found so attractive. "Time to dance with my beautiful birthday girl," he called out, extending his hand. I took it, letting him pull me close, breathing in his expensive cologne. His touch felt different now. Every caress tainted with purpose, every whispered endearment calculated for effect. "Happy birthday, darling," he murmured against my ear. "Are you enjoying your party?" I leaned back just enough to meet his eyes, searching for any crack in his performance. "It's perfect," I lied, matching his tone exactly. "Everything is absolutely perfect." As we spun across the floor, I made my decision. Tom thought he was playing chess, but he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd grown up in this world of wealth and power too. And unlike him, I'd learned that the most dangerous players aren't the ones who bare their teeth. They're the ones who smile back. 3 days after my birthday party, I sat across from my father in his study, watching him read through quarterly reports while pretending everything was normal. The leather chair creaked beneath me as I shifted, fighting the urge to blurt out what I'd overheard. "You're fidgeting," he said without looking up. "Just like when you were little and broke something. I need to ask you about the quantum computing division." His pen stopped moving. "That's classified information, Jade." "Is it?" "Because Tom seems to know quite a bit about it." Dad's eyes met mine, sharp and calculating. What exactly did Tom say? Nothing specific. I kept my voice steady. Just enough to make me wonder why my husband knows more about your company's security protocols than your own daughter. He leaned back, studying me with the same intensity he used in board meetings. Have you discussed this with Tom? Of course not. I'm not stupid. No, he agreed. You're not. Which is why I'm surprised you married him in the first place. The words hit like a slap. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've seen too many sharks in business not to recognize one swimming in my own pool. He stood, walking to the window. Tom's always been too perfect, too eager to please. Men like that usually want something. And you waited until now to tell me this? Would you have listened? He turned back to me. You were so determined to prove you could make your own choices, live independently of the family money. This isn't about money. Everything is about money, Jade, especially with people like Mason involved. My stomach clenched. What do you know about Mason? Before he could answer, Tom's voice carried from the hallway. Anyone home? Dad's expression smoothed instantly. Not a word, he warned, then raised his voice. In here, Tom. My husband appeared in the doorway, handsome and polished in his business suit. There you are. He smiled at me. I've been looking everywhere. Ready for dinner? Actually, Dad interrupted. I need to borrow my daughter for the evening. Board meeting emergency? I could use her perspective on a new charitable initiative. Tom's smile flickered for just a moment. Surely it can wait. We have reservations at... It can't. Dad's tone was final. Family business, you understand? I watched the micro-expressions cross Tom's face. Frustration, calculation, resignation, before settling back into pleasant acceptance. Of course. Rain check, darling. Sorry, I said. Not sorry at all. Duty calls. After Tom left, Dad locked the door. We need to talk about Mason's new tech venture, he said grimly, and why he's suddenly so interested in quantum computing. I thought you said that was classified. It is. But you're not just my daughter anymore. You're a potential security breach. He pulled a file from his desk. Everything Tom knows about our company, he learned from you. Even the things you didn't realize you were telling him. My chest tightened as I remembered countless dinner conversations, casual questions about Dad's work, Tom's seemingly innocent interest in my family's business. I trusted him. I know. Dad's voice softened. That's what makes men like him so dangerous. They weaponize trust. So what do? We feed him exactly what Mason wants to hear. Dad smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. While we figure out their real game. And then? And then, my dear, we teach them why it's unwise to underestimate either of us. I thought about Tom's practiced smile, the way he'd spun me across the dance floor while plotting against my family. The hurt was still there, but something else was growing stronger. A cold, calculating anger that felt surprisingly comfortable. One more thing, Dad added, pulling out his phone. Your mother's been monitoring Sophie's social media. Seems Tom's sister isn't as loyal to her family as they think. He showed me a series of deleted posts. Sophie venting about Mason's impossible demands and ethical gray areas. My mind raced with possibilities. I'll handle Sophie, I said, standing up. She's always felt trapped in Mason's shadow. Maybe it's time someone offered her a way out. Dad nodded approvingly. Just remember, in this game, everyone's playing an angle, even the ones who seem to be on your side. As I left his study, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My reflection showed someone different from the trusting wife I'd been just days ago. Someone harder, sharper, someone ready to play the long game. Tom wanted to learn about my family's business? Fine. I'd give him a front row seat to exactly how we handled threats. Let the lessons begin. The encrypted files appeared in my inbox at exactly 3:47 a.m. Sophie had come through just as I'd hoped. My hands trembled as I downloaded the documents, Tom's steady breathing from our bedroom down the hall a reminder of how careful I needed to be. The first document made my blood run cold. Detailed schematics of Dad's quantum security system, annotated in Tom's precise handwriting. The second was worse. A complete timeline for dismantling my father's company, piece by calculated piece. My phone buzzed. Sophie. Delete after reading. Mason checks my computer tomorrow. I typed back, "You're doing the right thing." Her response came quickly. Am I? He's still my father. And Tom's still my husband. Doesn't make what they're doing right. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Meeting tomorrow? Usual place? I agreed, then wiped our conversation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Using the same tactics of secrecy and manipulation that I despised in Tom. But he'd taught me well, hadn't he? Still working? Tom's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway of my home office, hair tousled from sleep, looking so perfectly innocent it made my stomach turn. Charity gala planning. I lied smoothly. Did I wake you? He crossed the room, massaging my shoulders. Every touch felt like betrayal. Come back to bed. The gala can wait. Just 5 more minutes. I leaned into his touch, hating myself for it. Hey, how's the new venture with your father going? His hands paused fractionally. Smoothly. Why do you ask? Just curious. You've been working such long hours lately. Missing me? His lips brushed my neck, and I forced myself not to stiffen. I promise it'll all be worth it soon. I bet it will, I thought, closing the laptop. You know what? You're right. Let's go to bed. The next morning, I met Sophie at a small cafe far from both our family's usual haunts. She looked exhausted, shadows under her eyes matching the gray clouds overhead. There's more, she said without preamble. Mason's meeting with Chinese investors next week. They're not just planning to tank your father's company. They're selling the technology overseas. That's illegal. Since when has that stopped my father? She stirred her untouched coffee. Tom's the point man for the whole operation. Has been since before your wedding. The words hit like physical blows. Our entire marriage was strategic. She met my eyes. I'm sorry, Jade. I should have told you sooner, but he's your brother. I finished. I understand loyalty, Sophie. What I don't understand is betraying your own conscience. Says the woman planning to destroy her husband. He destroyed himself. I'm just providing the evidence. Sophie glanced around nervously. Mason's getting suspicious. He asked about missing files this morning. Did you cover your tracks? Of course, but... She stopped as my phone rang. Dad's office number. Hello? Get to the office, now. Dad's voice was tight with controlled fury. Bring Tom. What's wrong? Someone leaked details of the quantum project. Stock's already dropping. Your husband wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would he? My eyes met Sophie's widening ones across the table. We'll be right there. After hanging up, I gripped the table edge. They moved up their timeline. Why would they? Because I warned them. A familiar voice said behind me. I turned to find Nathan standing there, my younger brother's face a mask of guilt. I'm sorry, Jade, but Tom figured out what you were doing. He came to me last week, showed me proof that Dad's been embezzling money for years. Said if I helped him, he'd keep it quiet. Sophie stood so quickly her chair toppled. I have to go. I can't be seen here. Sophie, wait. But she was already gone, leaving me staring at my brother's tortured expression. I thought I was protecting the family, Nathan whispered. By betraying it? By preventing a scandal that would destroy us all. He reached for my arm, but I jerked away. Jade, please. Don't. My voice was ice. You don't get to explain. Not now. Right now, I need to get to the office and watch my husband try to lie his way through this. And you... I gathered my things, feeling something hard and cold crystallize in my chest. You get to live with your choices. As I walked away, I pulled out my phone to call Tom. Time to see just how good an actor my husband really was. The game was changing, but so was I. And unlike Nathan, I knew exactly whose side I was on. The boardroom felt like a pressure cooker as I watched Tom explain away the security breach. He stood at the head of the table, every gesture calculated, every word precise. My father sat stone-faced beside me while Mason lounged in his chair with barely concealed satisfaction. "It appears to be an internal leak," Tom said, sliding documents across the polished surface. "Someone with high-level access to the quantum computing protocols." I caught the slight emphasis on high level. A warning aimed directly at my father. "Fascinating theory," Dad replied, his voice arctic. "And I suppose you have evidence to support this?" Tom's smile didn't waver. "Actually, yes. Nathan was kind enough to provide some interesting financial records." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I watched my father's knuckles whiten against the armrest. "I think." My mother's voice cut through the tension as she swept into the room. "We should discuss this in private." She fixed Tom with a look that could freeze hell. "Family only." "I am family," Tom protested. "Are you?" Mom settled into her chair like a queen taking her throne. "Because from where I'm sitting, you seem more like Mason's son than my daughter's husband." Mason straightened, dropping his casual pose. "Linda, let's not make this personal." "Oh, but it is personal." She pulled out her tablet, tapping the screen with manicured precision. "Just like those offshore accounts you've been hiding from the IRS. Personal enough to ruin several families, I'd say." The blood drained from Mason's face. Tom's perfect composure cracked, just slightly. "Mother," I said carefully, "what exactly do you know?" "Everything." She smiled, and I saw where I'd inherited my capacity for vengeance. "Did you really think I'd let my daughter marry into the Mason family without doing my homework? I've been collecting insurance for 2 years. Tom's laugh held an edge of desperation. "You're bluffing." "Sophie didn't just send files to Jade," Mom replied. "She sent copies to me as well. Smart girl, hedging her bets." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My mother had known. All this time, while I'd been playing detective, she'd been orchestrating her own countermoves. "Richard," Mason said tightly, "control your wife." Dad's laugh was genuine. "I learned long ago that's not how our marriage works." He stood, straightening his jacket. "Now, we have 2 options. We can all destroy each other publicly, or we can negotiate a more private resolution." "You'd really tank your own company to spite us?" Tom asked. "No," I cut in, finally seeing the whole board. He'd sacrificed the quantum division to protect something more valuable. I turned to my father. "The embezzlement charges Nathan found. They're fake, aren't they?" "You planted them." Dad's slight nod confirmed it. "Sometimes you have to sacrifice a pawn to protect the queen." "This is insane," Tom snapped, but I could see the calculations running behind his eyes. Everything he'd planned, every manipulation was unraveling. "Speaking of queens," Mom added pleasantly, "Sophie's waiting in my office. She has quite a story to tell the SEC about Mason's creative accounting practices. Unless, of course, we can reach an understanding." Mason stood so abruptly his chair toppled. "You treacherous." "Careful," Mom warned. "Family only, remember?" I watched Tom's face as reality set in. He'd thought he was playing chess, but he'd been the piece all along, just like I had been until I learned to play the game myself. "So," Dad said into the heavy silence, "shall we discuss terms?" Tom's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw real fear there. "Jade, please, family only." I echoed my mother's words, twisting my wedding ring off and placing it on the table. The soft clink seemed to echo in the silence. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours about the divorce." As security arrived to escort Tom and Mason out, my mother reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did well," she murmured, "but the game's not over yet." She was right. Nathan's betrayal still hung between us. Sophie's loyalty remained uncertain. And somewhere in the chaos, I'd lost sight of who I was trying to protect. my family's legacy, or my own soul. But watching Tom's retreating back, I realized something else. Revenge, like love, was a family tradition, and I'd learned from the best. The annual charity gala felt like a minefield dressed in evening wear. Every smile concealed a weapon. Every handshake carried hidden meaning. I watched Tom work the crowd from across the ballroom. His charm now a transparent mask I couldn't believe I'd ever found genuine. Quite the turnout. Sophie materialized beside me, champagne trembling slightly in her hand. Mason's bringing the Chinese investors. Here? Tonight? My grip tightened on my clutch. That wasn't part of the plan. Plans change. Her eyes darted nervously to where Mason held court near the stage. They're announcing the merger tonight. Tom's idea. Of course it was. The charity gala I'd spent months organizing, my pet project to support local education, he'd turned it into his victory lap. The perfect venue to humiliate both me and my father in front of Seattle's entire social circle. Ladies, Nathan appeared, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. We need to talk. Now. We slipped into a side room where Ella waited with her laptop. The SEC documents are fake, she said without preamble. Mason created a paper trail making it look like your father's been embezzling for years, but I found the digital fingerprints. They're planning to release everything tonight. That's not all, Nathan added. The Chinese deal isn't just about the quantum technology. They're using it as cover to access government contracts through Dad's company. Once the merger goes through, it becomes international espionage. I finished, the pieces clicking into place. That's why they needed me to sign over my shares. Without family majority control, the regulatory oversight changes. Sophie's face had gone pale. God, Jade, I had no idea they'd go this far. A knock at the door made us all freeze. Jade? Tom's voice carried through the wood. Your speech is in 5 minutes, darling. My prepared speech about educational equality now felt like a joke. They'd orchestrated everything. The charity event, the timing, the guests. Every person who'd supported my philanthropic work would witness my family's disgrace. I'll stall, Ella offered, but I shook my head. No. Something cold and certain crystallized in my chest. I'm done playing defense. I stepped into the hallway where Tom waited, his smile as practiced as ever. There you are, ready to inspire the masses? Actually, I touched his arm, feeling him tense slightly. I need your help with something first. In private. Curiosity won out over caution. He followed me to my father's private office, where I knew the security cameras had been conveniently disabled for Mason's later meeting. You know, I said conversationally, closing the door, my mother taught me something interesting about power. I moved to the desk, watching his reflection in the window. It's not about who has the most weapons. It's about who's willing to use them. Jade. The SEC documents are fake. I turned to face him. But the offshore accounts Mom found? Those are very real. Just like the recordings of your meetings with the Chinese investors. The ones where you discuss selling government secrets. His facade cracked. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out my phone, playing a snippet of his voice discussing security protocols. Sophie's been recording everything since that night at my birthday party. Insurance, she called it. Apparently she learned from the best. If you expose this, you'll destroy your father's company too. Maybe. I stepped closer, seeing real fear in his eyes now. But Mason will go to prison. And you? Treason charges carry such heavy sentences these days. What do you want? In about 3 minutes, you're going to announce that the merger's off. You'll cite ethical concerns, praise my father's integrity, and then you'll leave. Tonight. If you ever come near my family again, you'll destroy me. His laugh held no humor. When did you become so cold? You taught me well. I reached up, straightening his tie one last time. Consider it your lasting contribution to our marriage. The ballroom fell silent as Tom took the stage minutes later. I watched from the back as he delivered the performance of his life, gracefully withdrawing from the merger, praising my father's leadership. Mason's face turned progressively darker with each word. "Well played," my mother murmured, appearing beside me. "But you know they won't give up easily. I'm counting on it." I watched Tom make his exit, Mason following in barely contained fury. Some people only learn when they lose everything. And Nathan? Sophie? I thought of my brother's guilty face, Sophie's trembling hands. Family is complicated. Yes, she agreed, linking her arm through mine as we prepared to face the curious crowd. That's what makes revenge so interesting. The game wasn't over, but the rules had changed. And this time, I was dealing the cards. The emergency board meeting felt like an execution, and I was both judge and condemned. Mason had called it 3 days after the gala, gathering every major shareholder in our company's glass-walled conference room. Tom sat beside his father, wearing contrition like a borrowed suit. "The evidence is irrefutable," Mason announced, projecting documents onto the screen. "Richard Chen has been systematically embezzling funds through shell companies for the past decade." My father remained perfectly still beside me as our family's reputation unraveled in pristine PowerPoint slides. Each transaction, each transfer, all fabricated but crafted with Mason's signature thoroughness. "That's not all," Tom added, his voice carrying just the right note of reluctance. "We've discovered irregular payments to Chinese technology firms, suggesting corporate espionage." The boardroom erupted in murmurs. I watched familiar faces turn hostile, years of trust evaporating in seconds. "These accusations are groundless," Dad started, but Mason smoothly interrupted. "Which is why we've already contacted the SEC. He smiled, shark-like. "They're very interested in speaking with you, Richard. And Jade." My head snapped up. "Me? Several transfers were authorized under your credentials." Tom wouldn't meet my eyes. "We believe you were an unwitting accomplice, of course. Your father's victim as much as anyone." The trap closed with elegant precision. They'd used my own login credentials, probably collected during our marriage, to create a paper trail leading directly to me. I could claim innocence, but only by condemning my father. "There is another option," Mason offered magnanimously. "If Richard steps down immediately and the Chen family transfers their controlling shares to neutral management, meaning me, we might avoid criminal charges." Sophie shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but remained silent. Nathan, conspicuously absent, had stopped answering my calls days ago. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide," Mason concluded. "Choose wisely." The room emptied quickly, leaving only our two families. Mom's hand found mine under the table, squeezing once. "Well played," Dad said quietly. "Using my daughter against me. I taught you well, Tom. You taught me to seize opportunities." Tom finally met my gaze. "Nothing personal, darling. Just business." "Like our marriage?" "That was..." He hesitated. "Complicated." "No." I stood, my chair scraping harshly. "It was practice for both of us." Mason's smile faltered slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means," Mom interjected smoothly, "that you should check your own accounts before throwing stones." Tom's phone buzzed, then Mason's. Their faces changed as they read whatever messages had arrived. "What did you do?" Tom's voice held real fear now. "Me? Nothing." I gathered my things calmly. "But Sophie's been very busy. Those offshore accounts you used to hide the Chinese technology deals? They're not so hidden anymore." Mason lunged for his phone, probably calling his accountant. Too late. Sophie had been transferring documents to the FBI for weeks, building a case while playing the dutiful daughter. "You destroy everything?" Tom grabbed my arm as I passed. "Your family's company, your reputation. You already did that." I pulled free. "I'm just making sure everyone burns together." The SEC investigation is about to get very interesting. Dad stood, straightening his tie, especially when they discover who's really been selling government secrets. We left them there, frantically making calls. In the elevator, Mom finally spoke. Sophie's evidence might not be enough. We could still lose everything. We already have. The numbers descended steadily, but so will they. Nathan made his choice. The words tasted like ashes. Everyone did. The elevator doors opened to a lobby full of reporters. Someone had tipped off the press. Through the flashing cameras, I caught a glimpse of Nathan standing near the entrance, looking lost. Miss Chen, is it true your father's being investigated for treason? Mr. Chen, are the Chinese technology deals legitimate? Jade, did you know about the embezzlement? Questions bombarded us as security cleared a path. I kept my face neutral, channeling my mother's practiced society smile. Let them speculate. By tomorrow, every news outlet would have a different kind of scandal to report. In the car, Dad finally broke. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I never meant for you to... Don't. I watched Seattle's skyline blur past. We're past apologies now. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. Reputations would shatter, fortunes would vanish, and families would fracture beyond repair, including mine. But tonight, I just felt hollow, wondering if revenge was worth the cost of becoming someone I barely recognized. Nathan found me in our childhood treehouse, where the Seattle rain drummed a steady rhythm on the roof. He climbed up awkwardly, clutching a laptop to his chest like a shield. You need to see this, he said, voice rough. Mason didn't just want Dad's company. This goes deeper. I stared at the screen as he pulled up encrypted files. Decades of transactions, shell companies, and something far worse. The quantum computing technology wasn't the target. It was bait. They're using it to access government defense contracts, Nathan explained. Once they control the company, they control the back doors to national security systems. The pieces clicked into horrible place. That's why they needed our family shares, without majority control. The security clearances wouldn't transfer. He met my eyes. Jade, I'm sorry. When Tom approached me, I thought I was protecting Dad from the embezzlement charges. I didn't know... My phone buzzed. Mason. My office, 1 hour. Come alone. The rain had stopped by the time I reached Mason's building. Tom was waiting in the lobby, looking haunted. Don't go up there, he said quietly. Please, you don't understand what he's capable of. But you do. I stepped around him. That's why you married me, isn't it? The perfect inside man. I loved you. His voice cracked. Maybe not at first, but save it for the prosecutors. Mason's office occupied the top floor, all glass and steel and power. He stood at the window. Seattle's skyline spread out behind him like a kingdom. I always admired your mother's steel, he said without turning. You inherited that. Tom was supposed to soften you, make you pliable. Instead, I learned from him. I moved to the desk, noting the single glass of whiskey. Interesting choice, meeting alone. We're not alone. He finally turned. Sophie's been listening from the next room, haven't you, darling? The connecting door opened. Sophie entered, pale but steady, gun trained on me. I'm sorry, she whispered. He knows about the FBI files, about everything. Mason smiled. Family loyalty is such a fragile thing, isn't it? But money never betrays you. That's where you're wrong. I pulled out my phone, turning it to show the active recording. Money just betrays differently. His smile faltered. Sophie, take her phone. Actually, Sophie's aim shifted to her father. I think we're done taking orders from you. You ungrateful. The FBI has everything, I cut in. The defense contracts, the Chinese technology deals, the shell companies. Nathan's been working with them for weeks, gathering evidence while you were focused on me. Nathan? Mason laughed. Your weak-willed brother? My brother who's been tracking your offshore accounts since that night at my birthday party. I smiled. Turns out artists are good at seeing patterns in chaos. The office door opened. Tom entered, followed by federal agents. Mason Reynolds, one announced. You're under arrest for conspiracy, treason, and corporate espionage. As they read him his rights, Mason's facade finally cracked. Tom, tell them what really happened. But Tom stood silent, watching his father's empire crumble with the same calculated expression he'd once used to win my heart. You taught me well, Dad, he said finally. Always choose the winning side. After the agents led Mason away, Sophie lowered the gun with shaking hands. They'll arrest Tom too, won't they? Yes. I watched my husband submit to handcuffs with practiced grace. But his cooperation deal should help with sentencing. And us? Immunity. I touched her arm gently. You and Nathan both. Sometimes betraying your family is the only way to save them. Through the window, I watched Mason and Tom being led to separate cars. They'd taught me everything I knew about manipulation and revenge, never realizing I'd use those lessons against them. Was any of it real? Sophie asked quietly. Between you and Tom? I thought of quiet moments, shared dreams, and perfectly crafted lies. Does it matter anymore? The rain started again, washing Seattle clean. Tomorrow would bring press conferences, legal battles, and the long process of rebuilding both our families' legacies. But tonight, watching two master manipulators face the consequences of their actions, I finally understood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming better at their own game. The courtroom emptied slowly after Mason's sentencing, leaving me alone with the echoes of 25 years without parole still ringing in my ears. Tom had received 12 years in his separate trial, his cooperation buying him a lighter sentence, but not redemption. I lingered, watching Sophie gather her things a few rows ahead. She'd testified against both her father and brother, her voice never wavering as she detailed their crimes. Now she looked both older and younger somehow, freed from her family's shadow, but weighted by its cost. Ready? Nathan appeared at my elbow, his artist's hands fidgeting with his tie. Almost. I touched the divorce papers in my bag, finally signed this morning. Just need a minute. He nodded, understanding. We'd both learned the weight of betrayal and the price of loyalty these past months. Our relationship, fractured by his initial deception, had slowly mended through shared purpose and hard truths. Outside, reporters clustered on the courthouse steps. I spotted my parents waiting by their car, Mom's perfect posture and Dad's steady presence anchoring the chaos. They'd weathered the scandal with characteristic grace, emerging stronger for having faced it together. Miss Chen. A reporter broke from the pack. Any comment on Mason Reynolds' sentencing? Justice was served, I said simply, the words tasting like ash and victory. And your ex-husband's testimony? Sources say Tom Reynolds claimed genuine feelings for you, despite his involvement in the conspiracy. I thought of Tom's face during his allocution, the practiced sincerity I'd once mistaken for love. Some people mistake manipulation for emotion. I'm not one of them anymore. The company had survived, though changed. Dad had stepped down as CEO, passing the role to a trusted board member while he focused on family healing. The quantum computing division, nearly destroyed by Mason's schemes, now led the industry in security protocols. Irony at its finest. Jade. Sophie caught up to me at the bottom of the steps. I'm leaving Seattle. Fresh start. Where will you go? New York. Ella's nonprofit is expanding there. They need someone who understands both business and betrayal. Her smile held a shadow of her old warmth. Thank you for showing me there's more than one kind of loyalty. I hugged her, feeling the tremors she tried to hide. We'd started as enemies pawns and ended as something like sisters, another unexpected outcome of this war. Sophie, Mom called out, approaching with her characteristic elegance. Join us for dinner? There's something we'd like to discuss. I raised an eyebrow at my mother's tone. She smiled, that knowing look I'd seen at my birthday party all those months ago. Did you really know? I asked quietly. From the beginning, I knew men like Mason, and I recognized Tom's ambition. She straightened my collar, a gesture from childhood. But I needed you to see it yourself. Strength isn't inherited, darling. It's earned. At dinner, over perfectly paired wine and unspoken understanding, my parents offered Sophie a position with our family's charitable foundation. A chance to rebuild both our family's legacies, but differently this time, with purpose instead of power. Why? Sophie asked, voice rough with emotion. Because, Dad replied, some things are worth more than revenge, like showing the next generation a better way. Later, walking the familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood, I found myself at the old treehouse. Nathan's latest artwork covered one wall, abstract shapes that somehow captured our family's journey from betrayal to redemption. It's not finished, he said, climbing up behind me. Still working on the ending. I studied the patterns, seeing echoes of our choices, our scars, our healing. Maybe that's the point. Some stories don't end cleanly. And some families don't break the way others expect, he added softly. I touched the rough wood, remembering the girl who'd once played here, innocent of power games and calculated betrayals. She was gone, but something stronger had taken her place. Someone who understood that true victory isn't in destroying your enemies, but in choosing what kind of person you become while fighting them. The Seattle skyline glittered beyond the trees, a landscape of possibilities and pitfalls. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices, new chances to either perpetuate cycles of revenge or break them. I was ready for either.